And it's very impressive that you have bumped up the protein by 4 times in the cookie. So can you share a little bit more about that? And was there a difference between the baking time? Did it color more? Was it easier to bake, or was it more brittle? We would like to know some more of that physical characteristics of the high protein cookie.
You can say that in general, when we do an exercise like this, we always try to be as close to the reference as possible. So be as close to the expected normal standard procedures when it comes to molding, to mixing, when it comes to baking. And that is why we truly believe that the ISO bar does an extremely good job here, because especially on coloring, which is very often an issue when you add high levels of protein. In this specific recipe, there's 18.5% of the entire recipe that is proteins in powder, the ISO bar. And normally you would expect that the lactose would have a huge impact on that. And to burn the product, simply there will be too much Maillard reaction. The ISO bar is quite low on lactose. It's one of the good things about it, which suits quite well to these type of recipes where the addition will be quite high in order to get to this high level of protein.
Yeah, actually that means there was no change in the baking time at all. Totally the same baking time as a normal standard recipe.
Is there a big difference in the rheology of the dough when you switch up to this high protein content?
Normally, we don't see any difference. It's of course depending on how high you go in protein. You can go even higher than we have done, and maybe there will be some changes. But normally, we don't see any differences, and that's one of the benefits by using our protein.
You can say that when you're trying to do a one-to-one substitution with flour, the proteins that go in instead, it has to work on different parameters, of course. So first thing is the ability to absorb water. Ideally, it should behave a bit like you would expect that the flour would behave. So that is the first thing. And one thing is working with a good dough consistency and the rheology. And you saw in the video that if you just use a standard whey protein concentrate, then you would see completely different behavior with oil being pressed out of the dough. The emulsifying properties would be too bad simply. So you would leave traces of fat on the surface of the product, and that will affect the appearance and the bite too. It will be significantly harder.
Not considered dairy-free. Its origin is dairy, so it's not dairy-free.
I would like to add to that. It is a dairy allergen. However, you should use this if you are already producing dairy products on the line. So this is where it benefits your product most.
Of course, there will be a maximum amount. There's also, of course, some cost issues to take into account when you are working with a product like this. But I don't know if you noticed, in the end of the video, we passed by like a panini bread we have made. it has more than 20% protein on energy. It's more, when it comes to the European high protein claim, then the protein energy level is important, but it's above 20% in protein. Also adding the iso whey bar to a baked product. It's always a matter of how much protein you would add in, how much volume you would have in the product or like in the product. But in general, we see also very good performance in a yeast-raised dough system. Before, you can say this product is highly functional on different parameters. So that means that you have a product that works on dough properties, absorbs some water, to some extent can create some elasticity. Not saying that it's a gluten replacer, but it's a product that also can mimic a bit what gluten is able to do. Then when it comes to the baking part, the iso whey bar also has some quite unique gelling properties to create some structure, to create a good bite, a crispy bite too. And so you can say it's very different to standard whey protein concentrates.
And you can also say if you use a standard whey protein concentrate, sometimes if you get that high in protein level, you will get a little bit more off taste than the one that we are using.
It's important to say that it is not possible to do a protein enrichment as an on top of an existing recipe. So you need to create some space in the matrix to more dry matter. So there's no such ingredient that can be sprinkled on top and then it just works as a protein enrichment.
So what would you recommend to remove from the formula to be able to accommodate 24 grams?
Yeah.
From the flour.
First, it would be flour, yeah. That would be...
First of all.
Yeah.
I agree as well.
Doesn't have any on the process, and on the level that we are using, we don't see any differences if you compare it to a normal process. And it's very easy to work with. There's an undusting powder, and you just have to add it. And that's it.
I won't say that a standard whey protein concentrate cannot be used, but it's always depending on the level of proteins that you would like to end up with in your final product. In this case, we are aiming quite high, and there's no doubt about that. The higher you want to go on proteins, the more sophisticated solution is there a need for. It's also an individual thing. What is your reference? But all tendencies that we see is that as these high protein products are becoming more mainstream, there is less and less acceptance for bad quality just to get your high levels of proteins.
You can also say that the risk of my extra Maillard reaction is quite high because there's much more lactose in a whey protein concentrate than lactose and iso whey bar. So that could make changes in the baking time or the surface of the goods.
I agree with that. And that's what I was going to add is watch the lactose content. I mean, you want to just bump up the protein and not the sugar content. So that would be the main difference that I see.
Yeah, the lactose and iso whey bar contains 1.5% of lactose. So that's a very tiny amount.
Yeah.
I think a toast bread, baking a lidded toast bread, this is probably the most stressful, one of the most stressful conditions you can give to a bread. It is definitely possible to use the ISO weigh bar for this purpose. Although I think it's quite normal that in any case that you do new product development, that you also are taking other functional ingredients into account, that you would consider to do minor adjustments, for instance, on emulsifiers, or you can consider adding a couple of percentage of wheat gluten to it as well, because it is a quite stressful thing to do, to have a little toast bread, but maintaining the volume and keeping the strength. We know that the ISO weigh bar is far the best solutions we have seen.
Just to add to that, guys, what percentage are you using dry flour base before you really see an issue with the volume?
I can't remember on top of my head. I think we have to come back with that. I'm not.
I would say in those panini breads we showed you there, if you are working with baker's percentage where the flour would account for 100% when you do the calculations, then easily one is taking out 10%, substituting with 10% proteins. That is already enough to raise the protein level a lot. We have gone higher than that, but I can ensure that from 10% of the entire flour base didn't require any additional emulsifiers or gluten. I think if you go above that, then it could be the case. But yeah, we are definitely up for the challenge. If there's anybody, any producer out there who wants to go to the maximum, then yeah, of course it could be.
I think someone should really try that.
This one is not actually for gluten-free breads. We have some other special ingredients for gluten-free breads, I think.
Although I think you have tried it in biscuits, gluten-free biscuits.
Gluten-free biscuits, yeah, that's true.
It will also depend a bit on the application.
Yeah, that does.
Yeah.
But
Mads has done some quite amazing gluten-free sweet biscuits with the ISO weigh bar. And of course, when you do gluten-free bakery products, it's very often a combination of a variety of starches, and then you are finding your protein source from somewhere. And I think we can say that with the biscuits, they were really, really good.
They were good.
Yeah.
They were good, yeah.
And to add to that, David, the addition of a protein powder or protein product to bump up the gluten-free, to bump up the protein in gluten-free can affect functionality if you do not up a hydrocolloid or a modified starch, right? So because it is almost like adding in bran or adding in a whole grain product. So I think you can go as high as 3%, and anything higher than that in terms of per flour weight, you need to modify the other parts of the formula. So I think if anything, this product can be used in gluten-free products. You just need to manipulate the functionality of the other ingredients.
Elsewise, I can add to that I remember that BAKERpedia has a fantastic gluten-free session.
Yeah.
Yes, we do.
Made with us, actually. Yeah.
That's true,
So
Yes,
for
we did
that
cover
session, and for that session, you can say that we were really looking to mimic those viscoelastic properties that gluten can contribute with. So as Mads just said, we would probably have different products to recommend for specific for the gluten-free purpose.
Right. Just reach out to them.
Somebody is interested in the gluten-free. We have a fantastic product for gluten-free pizza crust. Amazing,
that
just
Mark,
fantastic.
Yeah,
really
and
fantastic.
Mark really took it to the test, and we're creating a lot of different recipes and different products with that recipe. So that was great. Remember that.
Awesome.
We haven't seen that it would affect the shelf life of the final product over time. Not really. It doesn't become more dry or anything, so that it doesn't affect the shelf life. That's a very good question. It's, of course, depending on what kind of enzymes you're using. I mean, if you're using proteases, then it might have an effect. We haven't done any specific trials for that. What do you think?
No, we have tried in some of these biscuit variants where you would normally use proteolytic enzymes, that it can be, they can easily work together with the proteins in this product. I think that when we go out and promote these kind of solutions to potential customers, I think we normally try to focus as much as we can on our own solutions. And that means preferable. We are not going out with a solution for biscuits that would require a specific enzyme or specific hydrocolloid or anything. It should be as close to the standard as possible. And I think in the biscuit industry, proteases are quite common. So we have tried that and without any negative impact at all. But very often we would also like to show this is what the proteins are doing to the product on its own. So showing some sort of a more naked product, can you say? So I think that everybody, for instance, that are into biscuit industry knows what proteases can do to the product. So I think that from the developer's point of view, it's also interesting to see what is the impact on the proteins at high levels. And then you can do the thinking from there, or trying to do a more tailored type of trialing.
Actually, it's quite easy. You just chose the muffins, but any type of, let's say, cakes that is like high in fat, it's very easy. It could be pound cakes or whatever. Very easy. No problem at all. Huh? Don't you agree, Christian? Yeah. And it counts on industrial produced cakes and also like for home cooking mixes. It's so easy. Really?
Yeah, especially the typical high ratio cakes.
Yeah. We haven't tried it out.
I haven't tried it.
No.
I think
that's
it would.
something we can
Yeah, I think it would.
Yeah, I think it would.
Yeah. Maybe it could actually improve it.
Yeah.
Depending on which type of end product we're talking about, of course, but using a nut flour, I assume that it's not something that comes with a big volume.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. This could be targeted from a keto point of view, right? Like totally protein, fiber. This would bump up your protein. It wouldn't have any effect on the fiber. And you said it's 1.5% sugar, right? 1.5% lactose. So I don't think that is going to be a problem there as well. So it would, to me, from a keto point of view, keto baking, high protein baking, it would definitely work with nut flours.
Actually, we have some solutions for keto bars as well. So
do you not have a solution for anything? You have a solution for everything. Tell me a little bit more about your keto bars. What did you use in your keto bars?
Yeah, we of course we use the proteins, and then I think we try to be compliant with all mainly the US recommendations on keto, because here in Europe it's a bit different. You should really be cautious by claiming keto here in our part of the world, at least, because then you're easily getting into problems. So we have tried to, and we will soon come out with a concept targeted for US especially on keto bars, because we truly believe that there's room for improvement, saying it in a polite way, on the keto bars.
Yes, I think the keto area has so much room for growth and therefore innovation. And if anyone is listening to this and you're a product developer, if you don't have keto on your portfolio, you need to jump into this game, because this growth is so strong. But that's a great question, and I hope we answered it. Let's start from the US first, and then I'll head over to Nats and Christian for the Europe trend. For the US trend, the high protein is really tailing the keto, right? So you can't go keto without being high protein. And it really depends on what category you're at. Certain categories like bread are more leaning keto now. I don't see much movement in tortillas. I don't see much movements in cookies and biscuits either. So it's slowly encroaching on traditional category brands. Of course, there is no common keto certification body yet that is very well recognized. So there is room for innovation there as well. But I think keto is really pushing the high protein, high fiber trend. And the reason why I say this is because high fiber has been there for many, many years. In fact, for the last decade, we've been pushing products of high fiber, right? But people didn't really take notice of that. When you say high fiber, immediately goes into people's minds as, oh yeah, cardboard tasting product, right? But now it's actually on the tailcoats of keto, because you can't claim keto if you're not high in fiber. So high protein, high fiber is very relevant in the US under the keto umbrella. And the keto umbrella is growing like crazy. I hope that explains what I see in the US. Mads and Christian, over to you for the Europe version.
I think in Europe, it's, of course, I think that people very often, they intend to, in the past, have seen protein-rich products to be healthier. I think, at least in our part, there is much more awareness of the calories, for instance, that they should be lower in a protein-enriched product. So consumers, they often want more healthy claims on that too. That could also be no sugar added. And then I think that in the home cooking, baking mixes, especially when we're talking about bakery, there we see a really growing area there. It is booming. So doing this final preparation at home, having high protein in the product, you just need to add water, maybe some fat, could also be an egg in some cases. But I think that there we see all the sports nutrition brands, they want to tap into this right now. And I think sometimes it can be a quite heavy task to launch a cookie in the market. There's so many products in the market, and if you're not coming with a bakery background, but you're a brand owner of a sports nutrition brand, then going into these kind of ready-to-use mixes, that is a quite easy step for them, and as we just see that is booming right now. So still, it's about home cooking.
It's also like the muffin you saw at the end of the presentation. We have a suggestion that 200 sachets of 200 grams of 50 grams of dry powder, you just add 250 grams of water and then stir it with a spoon. And then you can bake it as a finished muffin. So it's so easy to use. And then what we also see is booming is like high protein pancakes, ready to use at home mixes.
And I think many of these kind of baking mixes, we don't see them to have any fat added. This decision is left to the end consumer. And actually, there's many deviating meanings around which type of fat sources would be the best to consume. So the brand owners in this case, they are stepping out of that discussion. They are leaving this decision whether they want to add some kind of sophisticated oil to the product. Then they can do that. If they want to add butter, they can do that. Very often the products are consumed when they are fresh out of the oven, and that of course benefits any changes that you would do in your kitchen. So I think there's much more to chase in that area.
Normally, we don't see that. Of course, depending on how high you're going in protein level, you can go even higher sometimes than the ones that we suggested. But normally, you don't have to do any further changes. No, not really. Not what we have seen in our trials. It's totally the same. Again, depending on if you go even further up in protein, the ones that we have done recipes, we have done maybe a little bit less baking time to avoid browning, but we haven't seen that there's no changes, and there's changes required.
But in that case, it won't affect the taste. The Isoway bar comes with a very clean, very lean, milky taste, if anything. And I think it's in our DNA, in Arla Foods ingredients, that when we come up with new products, we work closely together with our big R&D department, and off taste is pretty high on the agenda. It's just as high on the agenda as the functionality. So we can say that no, it shouldn't affect any taste in that sense. It was more if it was in the egg replacement area, because of course eggs has some flavor in there. So yeah, but in that case you should be home free.
And then again, we have solutions for that.
Yeah, I don't think in terms of replacing egg, there is one particular magic ingredient. It has to be a few magical ingredients.
You will simply you won't have all that the gel strength that is created by eggs in Lakbara and Isoway bar. It doesn't give you that, and that's why you can go so high in protein without you're having that strength, that extra strength. So, but we have other solutions for egg-free cakes that couldn't be used as egg replacers. No, I think we have already discussed that a little bit. We don't see any effect on the browning. On the Maillard reaction, it's totally the same baking time, what kind of application you use it in, so no effect.
Vegan not, but vegetarian. All our products are vegetarian. other proteins. I think in general it's very mild, very lean taste. So depending on which other proteins
we
you
are
are,
talking about,
then
well, you can say in that way, I like for an whey bar is one of the proteins that gives as little off taste as any proteins. I mean, there's many other proteins that gives much more off taste at the end product.
the protein content.
Of the protein?
Yeah, if in the ISO whey bar,
86, minimum 86%.
yeah. And then there's of course some different regulations around the world. What is high protein? We mentioned it earlier that in Europe we are talking about how much energy should come from the proteins, and there you should be at least on 20% of the total energy that should be contributed by proteins to claim high protein. In US, as far as we know, it should be a bit in a different case. You're talking about compared to a reference product, and I don't know if you, Lin, you might have any comments on that. As far as we know, it should be 5 grams above a reference product to state high protein in the US.
Yes.
So very often it is a bit easier actually
In the US to claim high protein. It's depending on in our lab or at your side, at the end customer, or that it's hard to say.
I think Mads, like, how many times did you do it on your bench top for that cookie to get it right?
Oh, yeah, maybe. I can't remember totally exactly, but at least 25 or something, just to get the right proportions.
You can say the biggest part, the biggest chunk in this work is to create the ISO whey bar, to have the functionalities we are looking for. And once that has been done, then we of course go to different application tests to see, are there any limitations on ISO whey bar?
Actually, it started out with all these trials that we have screened all the other proteins we have, and then we found out that just like an ISO whey bar is working very well. And then how high can we go in dosage? Of course, we want to go as high as possible. And then again, it's much depending on, as we said in the video, how is it working on the machine? Is it easy to come off and so on? So, yeah.
So very often in a project like this, we are looking in the quite big toolbox we have of different protein fractions and trying to bring several of them into play and try to compare them. Which one would be most suitable for this? How does it behave when we stress it a bit, when we are raising the protein levels and that? So it's hard to say exactly how many trials that has been conducted, but
I usually get it right on the second one, guys.
Yeah.
I usually get it right on the second one, just like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nah.
It takes me personally as much as 4 or 5 times before I actually do get it right. All right, so we have reached the end of our questions, and I would like to thank Mads and Christian for coming on and helping us answer questions on high protein baking today. Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming, and have a great day.